guys, today I have Elisha Bravo with me, and she is a global life and wellness coach supporting clients all around the world, and she helps people from the inside out. She is a certified Cancer Project chef for PCRM Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, specializing in cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. She is also certified in the Gerson therapy by Dr. Dan Rogers, and she is an extraordinary woman. Her mission is to help teach people how to understand how God created our bodies to heal completely and totally by learning to balance the 4 quadrants of life: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. She began her work in 2010 after her son was injured by a vaccine. And you guys, I met her at a conference and I just got to talking to her, and I wanted to bring her on the podcast because she is an amazing woman with so much knowledge that needs to be shared. And you guys, here we go. We're going to get into it.
All right, here we go, you guys. Welcome to the Happy Whole You podcast. I have Elisha Bravo with me, and usually we record 25-30 minutes, but you guys, just fair warning, this could go longer because this woman is so intelligent. I met her at a conference where we were listening to Barbara O'Neill speak and teach, and we just got to talking, and I'm like, I need you to come on the podcast because you are so knowledgeable and have so much to offer, and I want people to hear what you have to say. So Elisha, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Well, I had to hurry up and push record because you and I were just diving down some great content and information. And I'm like, okay, we got to stop that here because people need to hear what we're saying. But first, before we get back to some of that stuff, can you share with everyone, like, what brought you to this position that you're in now? I read a little bit about your bio, so they already heard that. But can you take us through, like, what brought you from mortgage broker to where you're at now and how you're helping people heal from the inside out?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, I'm a mortgage broker, right? And I was living my best life, doing and living my dream, had real estate and lending, did both. And I was introduced to a wellness dinner that had this amazing, like, natural cookware, no heavy metals. And, again, we'll talk about that another time, but my mind was blown and I went to a cooking class. And so I'm sitting in a cooking class and this doctor comes walking in, and he was doing like a special class that I didn't even know I was a part of. And he's doing a PowerPoint presentation, and he's talking about all these things. And he says, here in the United States, if you're diagnosed with cancer, the doctor must prescribe chemo, radiation, or surgery, or it's a felony against the doctor. And I immediately was like, that's crazy. Never heard of such a thing. How is that even possible? Like, if something's wrong with me, my body's different than your body. The doctor is gonna do what's best for me. And I just dismissed it, right? And this was literally God planting seeds. Okay. So that was the first one. And so then a couple of weeks later, I'm thinking, well, gosh, man, if my kids ever get sick, it's kind of cool that I know this doctor, right? Because he was so informational. He tied everything back to biblical principles. He was using scripture in every point that he made. And he blew my mind. Okay. So I'm sitting there just working, market crashing, everything falling, all the things happening, right? In the financial market, 2007, 2008, right? All these things were going on. And then all of a sudden, my son, right? And he started doing this and he would swallow hard, and he was going through puberty, like early. I thought his voice was changing. I didn't really question it.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready for work and I'm putting on my mascara, minding my business, news is on background noise, right? And I see the story. And the story comes across my news. So this is the second seed. Okay. Story comes across my feed that says that this mom kidnapped her child in the Midwest, fled to California. That's how it came on our news, and was trying to get to Mexico for treatment. So I stop and I'm like looking at this, and they said the child was bald in a wheelchair, had many rounds of chemo, and the parents just said, we're done. We just want to enjoy what time we have. We don't want to do this anymore. The government stepped in and said, if you do not do the treatment, we're going to charge you a child endangerment and we're going to put your child in foster care.
Oh, wow.
And in that moment, I'm like, okay. So as an adult, I can say no thank you to whatever treatment that I choose. However, as a parent, I have no rights. Okay, so here we go. 2 seeds. Okay. So then a couple weeks later, my son comes to me and he's like, Mom, my throat hurts. Now, any good mom would grab a flashlight and see if it's worth a copay, right? Because I was still fully enthralled in regular Western medicine, knew nothing about health as far as your own ability to heal. And so I go in with the flashlight, and this thing literally comes out and then retracts. And all I can say is I ran outside, the world started spinning, I was hyperventilating, and I almost passed out. That's how horrible it was. Got him in the car, rushed to his, pediatrician, 12 years, never seen anything like it. Sent me to ear, nose, and throat specialist same day, 24 years, had never seen anything like it. Told me to go to Chalk Hospital, Orange County. Do not leave until he's seen. Okay. And I'm thinking, what's happened in the last month? So here I am as a mom, terrified, don't have anybody in my family that knows anything about health. And I'm just trying to look at the last month, last 6 months, like, what is it? So he had gotten the Tdap booster. So here in California, they had a sign at the high school, like the electron signs outside. He was going into junior high, and it said, no shots, no school, which is an absolute lie. Okay.
It is a lie.
It's a lie.
She's going to tell you guys why it's a lie and what you could do.
Okay. Total lie. And I thought that was, my kids were always vaccinated. I was the mom that they got held down, got 5 in 1 leg. I mean, all the things that I still cry about today because I just did not know. We don't know what we don't know. Right. And he had to go into 7th grade. So in order to go to 7th grade, he needs Tdap booster. So he gets the booster, and within 2 weeks of getting the booster, he's playing soccer and his foot's turned out, like almost he had a pebble in his cleat. And so after the game, I'm like, what's going on? And I take off his cleat. He had a plantar's wart the size of a silver dollar on the heel of his foot. And the dermatologist said he'd never seen it on a child that big. Okay. So here we are, knowing what we know now. We detox through our feet, right? So literally whatever was going on was trying to get out. Okay.
And his immune system was down from getting the Tdap. So then if you do have that virus, it's going to come out. It's going to act up, because when we lower the immune system, viruses, we never get rid of them. They're always in our body. And that's why people end up getting herpes repeat outbreaks, shingles, things like that. So, okay.
And later in life, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yes. So then when he did this thing with his throat, I'm sitting here in this emergency room ER, told me not to leave until I'm seen. So hours have been going by. And I'm thinking that's the only thing that he's had that's different than the food he eats, the air he breathes, right? The water he drinks, nothing had changed. And so 7 hours had passed. And let me tell you something. You've never seen sick kids until you've been into a hospital that treats the most egregious illnesses. I mean, these children were, just awful. And they had their little sewing kit boxes with all their medications they were taking in the ER, like travel with it, right? So I go up to the nurse and I was like, it's been 7 hours. I just want to know we're going to be seen. And the nurse looks at me and says, I know you think your son is sicker than any child you've seen here today. I said, you stop right there. I don't hope my son is sicker than any child I've seen here today. I said, but the fact that he has a Ripley's, believe it or not, in his throat and he can't breathe, I'm just asking when he's going to be seen.
Yeah, 7 hours. 7 hours.
7 hours. And he looks at the other nurse. He's like, bring him on back. So we bring him back. They do a CT. They do an MRI. They couldn't figure out where it was attached to, if it was like the nasal, the throat, right? The tonsil. And then the Grey's Anatomy team walks in, like all the ones with the short coats that are like super like hungry and excited and young. And they're like, can we see it? Can we see it? We just want to see it. Because again, pediatrician, 12 years, never seen it, anything like it. Ear, nose, and throat, 24 years, never seen it. So now I got this team, and I look at my son, and I see, he's like 10 or 11 at the time, going into 7th grade. And he's like, what should I do? And I said, it's your body. You want, want to forward medical science, like go for it. And he's like, okay. So she takes the little, tongue stick, and he goes, and this thing comes out, you guys. It's literally like if you're snorkeling and it's like an eel coming out of a reef. This thing like literally retracted. She gags in his face.
Oh God.
And he starts crying. Okay. And I look and I said, we're done. Everybody out. Nobody's coming near my son. And you should probably look for a new profession. Like, I just can't. Right.
Yeah.
So it's now 2 or 3 in the morning and never spoke to a doctor. Don't know anything. And they admit us into the cancer ward. Okay. So it's a darkened ward because it's the middle of the night. Everyone's sleeping. So everything's dimmed. And they said this side of the room is immune compromised. So they're all behind glass because they're currently in treatment for chemo. This is going to be your side until we determine what exactly it is that he has. Here's a sign-in sheet. And literally they had like this sheet here. And they said, you're going to put your name and stuff for showers. When your son is diagnosed with cancer, you're going to live here 6 months to a year. Tea and coffee is free, but you need to know the code. And we'll talk to you in the morning.
Wow.
I'm sorry. What? Right? I'm going to live here 6 months to a year. I'm going to shower rotation with other parents. I haven't even talked to a doctor. Like, what is happening for them to go that far, that quick?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so I always say that I'm alone with Google and God because I didn't know what to do. It's like 3 in the morning and I'm trying to like look and search and see and find and right. And 6 in the morning, they take him for another CT because the first one wasn't clear enough. And now my nurse is getting pissed. And I have to tell you, nurses are so underrated and undervalued. I mean, they're there
awesome.
putting in the work. They know your eating schedule, your bowel schedule. They know your sleeping schedule. I mean, they are in it with you, right?
Yeah.
And the doctors come in for 3 minutes and get the big paychecks. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw my nurse getting upset, I'm like, okay, something's wrong because she's getting irritated. And so the craziest thing, guys, is that I called the cookware company. Like, really? I literally called the cookware company, like completely desperate. And I'm like, can you put me on the phone with Dr. Dan Rogers? Like, I don't know anything other than I saw him a month ago. He made things that made a lot of sense. Here I am now, and I just need some direction. And so they get me on the phone with him, and he says, let me talk to your son. First thing, 11 years old, let me talk to your son. So I put him on the phone with my son, and he says, I'm going to take care of you. You have nothing to worry about. I'm going to start a prayer chain that's going to wrap around the world and back. You're going to be okay. And my son just starts crying. And he hands me back the phone. And that's the thing about putting God first in everything, right? And I feel like as we learn, as you have too, there's everything we've been through is for a reason to then help others. And if we didn't go through it the way we did, it wouldn't impact as many, right? Because we're just the same as everyone else, just doing our best. And so he gets me on the phone and he says, don't do any chemo whatsoever. Do half the radiation if they corner you and force you. Get it out and let me have them. Don't do any biopsies. Don't do any lumpectomies. Don't do anything. If it's foreign and it doesn't belong and it's a place that it doesn't need to be, get it out and let me have him. And he says, here are the 5 questions you have to ask the doctor. Now, he was talking about the larynx, the voice box, right? I didn't know about the lymph, that if they remove, he'll have autoimmune issues forever, like all these things, right? And as I'm sitting there as a mortgage broker, 27 years old, guys, like I was super young mom, okay? And I'm sitting there going, wait a second, like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I opened my companies when I was 27. I was like 30 when this was happening. But my point is that I was like, what is going on when all of this is going to happen? And I'm supposed to talk to a surgeon and nobody's respecting me as a parent. No one's answering my questions. I feel like I'm being railroaded. They're throwing me in all these different directions. Like, how is this happening to me? And he says, listen, ask these 5 questions. You become like a superhuman, where I was like taking in all the information at rapid speed. So I get in front of the surgeon. They booked an OR. You guys, I hadn't even talked to a doctor yet. They booked an OR.
Isn't that interesting how they're already figuring out what they're going to do without consent? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So I get in front of the surgeon and I got my 5 questions, right? How do you think he treated me?
Probably dismissive. and scared, and made you feel so scared. If you don't do this, your child's gonna die. I can only imagine.
He was so pissed, right? The ego.
You're questioning his authority, and how dare you ask a question?
So I said, time out. Just need a timeout. You're having me sign waivers, exactly what you said. These waivers said he may never talk again. He may have a collapsed lung. He may die. Sign this, we got to go.
Yeah.
I said, I have 5 questions, and if I had a white coat on, this would look very different, right? And he just paused. And I said, I have one request, that you operate on my son as if he was your own. That is my only request. So they test him for non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and it angers me to this day. And those are the things that we process: anger, resentment, and unforgiveness, to be able to let go and release. Okay. Because God had his hand in all areas, because I got out of the hospital, and that's the key, is that I was able to get out. Right. But what they did, and super frustrating, is the doctor comes in, and you know how they have like the paper on the beds, right?
Yeah.
So he takes a pin and he draws a circle. He draws a circle on the thing, and he goes, okay, so here's the tumor. And then he grafts it, and he just literally, like children's, this is what he does. He goes, and one part here could be benign, and the other one could probably be malignant, but we got it all. Okay, you guys, that's not how it works. I'm in Chalk Hospital, Orange County, #1 children's hospital in California. It's either cancer or it's not. It's either staged or it's not. You either graft it and test all the different tissues, or you don't. This was how dismissive he was. He released us, and that was it. Now,
what were the 5 questions? Do you remember the 5 questions that you asked him?
Yeah, so I asked the doctor about his voice, right? His larynx, his lymph, if they were going to remove any of the tissue. Because what happens, and I still have the medical reports, the way that they put the bed is they actually put his feet inverted, because it was the back of his throat, and they were going in this way. And you got to understand, the jaw only opened so much. They didn't go external. They went in through the throat, because they couldn't see where it was latching. Because I told you, like, it came in and out. So you didn't know if it was the tonsil or where it was. So when they're going in, they're digging, if they screw up, right? You got your voice, you got your larynx, your tonsil, all of those areas. And so those were the things about those, his collapsed lung, all of those things, because there's accountability. And that, if you really look at the error of medicine in our Western country, that we think we have such great healthcare, it's crazy, right? So I had 2 kids at the time. So I was in my early 30s. I had 2 kids at the time. And my daughter was the one that was really emotional and really, just gave me my run for my money. And he was like my still waters, right? So when we came home, and he was complaining, you guys, migraines, joint pain, nausea, he did not get over it. Whatever was going on, he just continually was feeling and complaining, miserable. So I took him back to the pediatrician.
And right? This was because after the surgery.
After the surgery, like, right? Just,
we got everything out. Everything's fine.
You're fine, right? And Dr. Dan had told me on the phone, get it out and bring him to me, right? But here's the thing. Dr. Dan has to operate in Mexico. Why? He lives in San Diego, but he has to be right past the border, because if he doesn't do radiation, chemo, and surgery as the very first thing, he's committing a felony. Right? I don't speak Spanish. I look like I should, but I don't. I skipped a generation of my family. And I always joke when I tell the story, it's not about being prejudiced. I wouldn't go to Canada. Why would I leave my country? USA. Why would I leave my country with my child for medical care? That just didn't make sense to me. Right? So again, I was doing my best on my own. And what's really interesting is when I took him back to the pediatrician, he looked at my son and said, he'd been his pediatrician since birth. So 12 years, he'd been his pediatrician. He says, we did $100,000 worth of testing. If there was anything wrong, we would have found it. You're fine. My son turns to me and says, Mom, fix me. Oh,
gosh.
Bawling.
Yeah.
So I loaded my family. And God convicts me to this day, you guys. I am so humbled by this experience, because I didn't want to drive 2 hours. We are a stone's throw away from the border, right? I didn't want to drive 2 hours. And he is 10 minutes right past the border, like super close. I was so resistant to go. And when I get there, there was people from Germany, South Africa. There was a 5-year-old from Poland. These people had paid $2,000 in airfare to see this doctor, and I didn't want to drive 2 hours. And so we ended up doing the full Gerson therapy, 100% vegan, 13 live juices, all the things, coffee enemas. We did it all. But when we got there, this was something that was really impactful. Is the doctor looked at me and he said, "I need to talk to your son alone." And I was like, "Yeah, we don't do that." And he's like, "No, I need to talk to him alone." And I was like, he could be 30 and just wouldn't be happening, right?
Yeah.
No, like, and he was like, "It's really important. I need to talk to him." And so he pulled him aside into another room, but it had an arch and it was open. And you guys, this gets me every time. It's really hard for me to talk about, is I heard him ask my son, "Do you want to live?" And now I know why he wanted me not in the room, because I like had my hand over, right?
Yeah.
Holding it in, and I hear silence. Right? I hear silence. And he asks him a second time, "Do you want to live?" He says, "Because you're going to have to drink the juices. You're going to have to eat the food. You're going to have to do the coffee enemas. Your parents can do it with you. They cannot do it for you. And if you go down this road of completely resetting your body and think you can go have a pizza or a burger or a cookie, you will be sicker then than you are now, and I won't be a part of it." That was one of the most powerful conversations my son has ever had in his entire life. He's 25 now. Most powerful, because he got it. Do you understand? There was no mom arguing, "You have to do this. You have," right?
Yeah.
He was like all in, because it was his choosing in that moment to understand. And I know you, as a physician doing what you do in the natural world, right? Being a doctor, helping people, that's the hardest thing, is commitment. Like, you want it so bad for them because you know what the other side of it looks like.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, "Come on, just get it. Just do it once and for all. Be there. You're so close." And as a coach, me helping others, I remember my son was 15 years old and someone was arguing me over cookies. And my son was in the car and he literally said, "Mom, let them die." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "It's free will. That's what they want. Let them." And that blew my mind as a teenager, that he understood the 4 quadrants that I teach: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, that it's all 4 connected. And that's kind of the internal battle that people feel, right? In their bodies, is all of that struggle and warfare of wanting the desire of what they want that got him sick in the first place, and leaving those things and making better choices daily. But I will tell you this, when I was in the hospital, I surrendered fully to the Lord and I said, "Lord, I'm here for a reason." I never cried once, you guys. I can't even tell the story. Like, I'm doing really well, because usually I'm like crying at different parts of the story because it's so personal and emotional. But I didn't cry in the hospital. I said, "Lord, this is my college. Show me what I'm here to see." And you guys, the things that I saw were heart-wrenching. Like, these kids were so sick and they were bringing them milkshakes. They were bringing them hamburgers because they were sick. They were giving them treats because they're sick. So why don't they get those things, right? When they were actually feeding the very thing that they were trying to kill. And there was this one little girl, she had ports in her chest, and all the parents were very close and they all knew each other's story because they really did live together. They really, they were invested in testing and surgeries. I mean, it was a community that was very, very tight. And you cannot donate your time. You cannot volunteer. It's a very closed off system when they have you in there. So it's kind of like all in there. And so her little girl, her name was Anaya. She had tubes in her chest, and I'm in front of the nursing station because you're taking walks. You're trying to get like circulation out of your room. And this mom goes, "How's your son? How's he doing?" And I said, "What are you here for?" And she goes, "Oh, well, she keeps vomiting. She can't keep anything down. She's been sick for 2 weeks. And I said, "What are you giving her?" She's like, "Well, she's a milk baby. She has to have her milk." You guys, milk has 12 grams of sugar. Okay. And sugar is feeding the cancer. Right. And so I looked at her and I said, because I was alone with Google and God. So I was doing my research. Right. So I wasn't where I am now, but I knew enough where I like was speaking on it. Right. So I said, well, have you tried almond milk or maybe a different type of milk, an alternative for her? And the nurse goes, excuse me, who are you? Right. And I'm like, oh, my son's in room like one, whatever, and I'm just a parent. And she was triggered by us even speaking of it. And they turn around, the mom goes, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm desperate. And I said, well, get just like a NutriBullet and like do your own little smoothie. If you want to give her something, give her like strawberries and fruit or something that, so that she at least transitions before you get her to like the vegetables. And she did what I said, you guys. And this is where God steered me. This was it. This one girl, this one mom, this one moment. She came to me the next day and she goes, my daughter finally ate for the first time. It didn't throw up. And after we got out of the hospital, I went to her house and I taught her some recipes to be able to feed her daughter. Her daughter, I came across her thing on social, is still alive and thriving today with a port, you guys, at 2 years old. So when you understand that all of these things, the number of vaccines that they're putting in your children from the day they are born, right? I have a 13-year-old now. He's never been vaccinated. He's my healthiest child. And I just always go back to logic. So can I show him the book?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have this too, you guys.
Okay. So I ordered this book. Okay. Look at this thing.
It's a monster.
Okay. And it literally is, and you open it up and it has a table of contents. It gives you every single vaccine and every case study and all of their side effects. Okay. And when I go back to logic, when they said they wanted to give him the Hep B, right, 24 hours of birth. Well, in my delivery, he swallowed some of the meconium. He had a little poop in the bag, right? And that never happened with my 3 children. And the one thing about the hepatitis B is you can't have any fever or any sickness in the body. So when they came in to pressure me, I said, well, he swallowed his own poop. How do you know he's not fighting infection?
Yeah.
Right? Well, he doesn't have a fever. Well, fever can be low grade. Right. One of the things my son had during his instance with cancer, and the reason why I know that's what it was is because all of the markers that he had, his temperature was 97.1 for 6 weeks. And it wasn't until it went back to 98.6 that all his symptoms were gone. And when you have a weakened immune system and you're fighting cancer cells, you actually have a lower temperature. Now, some people are low by birth, and that's different. If you've always been low, that's different. But someone who's always been the regular 98.6 all of a sudden is registering low. My sister got cancer shortly after, and we'll do that on another call. But she was 97.1, 97.2 when I was taking her in with stage 4. So it's very interesting when you start learning these different things that nobody talks about, doctors don't talk about, and you start keeping track of these symptoms and how they're feeling. And I look at my kids, my son's medical file is this thick. MRI, CT, surgery, right? All of the things. My daughter, she stopped going to the doctor at 9. Hers is about, an encyclopedia. She had ear infections, pink eye, croup, fevers that were unexplainable. By the time I get her to the hospital, 104, wait for 5 hours. They break it. I get home, it flare again. I mean, it was just an awful. She was always in the hospital. She had like a block in her UTI. They did like the dye test. Nothing was ever founded. No one could ever tell me the cause or the actual cure, right? We never had those conversations. It was always symptom treatment, symptom treatment, symptom treatment. That was it. It was always a revolving door. And then I had my little, he's 13 now. He has 1 sheet of paper. His age, his date of birth, his address. I mean, literally, it's unbelievable to see what you feed, right?
Yeah.
What you eat and drink in your environment and your supplements.
Yep.
Changes everything.
Yeah, it is. It is. So with your son, why did that happen? Why do you think that happened? And why did the doctor say it happened?
So they don't say, because if they said, then there would be consequences. Now, in the vaccine world, unfortunately, there is no consequences because they can't be sued. We've all learned that through the C word and what everybody went through and people are still dealing with, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard for people to understand that there's no repercussions. I
Wait,
will tell
let's
you.
take a minute. Let's take a minute. I want everyone to hear this. This is insane. So these vaccine companies can produce a product just as they produce the COVID vaccine, and they cannot be sued. They cannot be, if you have an injury, they're not liable. That's like a car company creating a car, and that car company does all the testing on the car and says, oh, our car's safe, our car's safe, our car's safe. And yet there are all these people that they're dying driving in these cars because something goes wrong, a tire flies off. I don't know, like say this car is defective. That car company is going to pay for that. They're going to do a recall. There's going to be, substantial lawsuits. But yet I don't understand why in this country that is not happening for these vaccine companies. If I were to produce a product and it wasn't safe and people were putting it in their body, I could be liable. I could be sued. Like this makes no sense. But what president was it that wrote in that law? I forget which president it was. There was one of the presidents wrote in one of the laws
Yeah.
I can't remember, but it was I mean this is crazy. Like this is crazy. So I just wanted to point that out because I don't know, it's just like there's no responsibility there, and it's incredible. And we've seen cancer rates go up since COVID vax. We've seen heart issues, vascular issues since COVID vaccine. And where's there's no like anything towards these vaccine companies, and I just think that that's so wrong. So anyways, I just want to point that out to everyone, but keep going.
Yeah, no, and doing Salad Master, I've cooked for many doctors. I mean, I literally, you don't know, you're going into someone's home, you're cooking for them, you don't know what they do for a living. So I've literally cooked for people who've actually, virologist who make vaccines, got an argument with him, got kicked out of his house. That was fun. I did, however, ask him, right? When he asked me, let me say, can I ask you a question? And he's looking at me. I said, how does my son have a medical file? My daughter have a medical file, and my other son, same parents, same genetics, same gender. And the only difference was the Tdap booster. Like, and my daughter being vaccinated till she was 9. That's the only difference.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that? And he's like, no. I said, okay, one more question. And the wife's looking at me like, please don't. And I'm like, just one more question, please. One more question. I said, why is it when you guys do the flu vaccine every year, and guys, this was way before, this was like, I was asking this question like 8 years ago. And I was like, how is it that every time you guys get the flu vaccine out there, where it's the bird flu or the H1N1 or whatever's going on at the time, how come every year the doctors on ABC News or whatever channel comes on and says, well, we're about 50%, 60%, it changed, but still get your vaccine? I said, is it because you make it so far in advance that you have to guess?
Yeah.
And he said, yes.
Yeah.
He said, yes.
That's
We're
why
guessing.
it's called practicing. That's why it's called practicing medicine. And I know earlier you referred to me as a physician. I am not a physician. I am just a traditional naturopath, and I have my PhD in natural medicine. So I want to be clear to everyone that I am not a physician. I am not a medical physician. I do not believe in synthetics. I don't believe in breaking the skin. I am not medical whatsoever. I always like to put that disclaimer out there because I don't want anyone to think that I'm
Yes, and I
anything
apologize,
else.
but I was doing more of a reference of being in the field of, right?
No, totally.
And that's what's hard, is that there's this definitive line that you can't be referred as one, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's me. People come to me all the time. You guys, I get people that have been to every doctor, who've been to all. I have a client right now that's having heart issues. Okay. She just literally saw one specialist. We're in June 2024. They want her to go to a cardiologist. Guess when the next availability is?
Oh, a few months.
No. February of 2025.
Oh, wow.
Your heart.
I wonder why.
2025 of February. Do you understand? So people are taking their health in their own hands. Okay.
Yeah.
And the most frustrating things, guys, is insurance doesn't cover it most of the time. Right. Yes, they are now doing, oh, we can go to Cairo, or maybe we can do a little massage, right? Maybe we can like squeeze a little bit. These companies are learning that there needs to be a little room for that, but not the cost. To go to Mexico for cancer treatment is $75,000. That's the starting rate.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing, when you have stage 4, whatever, because it's a whole body treatment, it doesn't matter. It could be schizophrenia. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis. You're literally clearing the entire body completely. You have to pay for that. And where does that money come from? I mean, people have life insurances and they're trying to get early drawouts. And it's like literally an act of God to get that money that you've paid into your whole life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of being able to do the things now before it gets there.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, we cannot wait for these insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies and our government to take care of us. Like, I think that's where people are missing. Like, you have to take your health in your own hands. You have to do your research. You have to figure out. And here's the thing, what is there to research? Eat real food, fruits, vegetables. If you eat meat, okay, make sure that that chicken was running around on the farm. If you're eating eggs, make sure that that chicken was running around on the farm. Like, just eat real food. It's not that complicated, but the reason that people think nutrition is complicated is because of all the advertisement and all the things that have been pushed at us. I pay $1,500 a month for my family to have what is required by law, health insurance, which we do not use. So if you think about that, that is like what, $17,000 a year that my family pays. And because by law, we have to have insurance for our children, and we're not even using this. And no longer, since Obamacare came into play, can you buy catastrophic insurance? Because I was like, well, I'd like to just buy, like, say I got in a car accident and my arm went flying off. Hell yes, I want Western medicine. Hell yes, I want a surgeon.
Yes.
Because they are amazing when it comes to saving lives in emergency. Western medicine is like, oh my gosh, come a long way. But when it comes to foundations of health, when it comes to just maintaining good health, reversing dis-ease that is occurring over time in the body, I think that's where we're not doing so hot. So tell me why, as an American, I can't choose my health care.
Yeah.
I can't choose my insurance. This is incredibly insane to me. And that my kids are having to get vaccines and get all this done to them. I live in the state of California where my daughter is 12 and she's supposed to get that Tdap. And she's like, Mom, but it's my body, my choice, right? And I'm like, well, I guess that's only certain situations, like how, like, this is crazy. So you could tell me my daughter has the right to go get an abortion, someday, but she doesn't have the right to say, I don't want that vaccine in my body. You guys, like, listen, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just saying, let's think critically. Does this make any sense? This does not make any sense. And so the fact that we have to go to Mexico, because I'm very familiar with the Gerson therapy. I went down to Southern California. I took, like, I think, a class and training on the enemas, on the nutrition, the juicing, all these stage 4 cancer survivors, stage 3, that went and they did the therapy. They went down to Mexico for a couple of weeks and then came back to their homes and did this therapy for, a couple years, 3 years. And that was just a lifestyle. And they're thriving.
Yeah.
They're thriving. I remember I met a 24-year-old gentleman. He was active, really good. He had tumors all throughout his stomach. And they just pretty much told him, like, go home and die. And he went through the Gerson therapy. And luckily, I think he said he had, like, somebody he was related to was a chiropractor. And they're like, hey, get vitamin C in IVs. And he did that, which vitamin C can help shrink tumors. And, like, it was just incredible. And this was me literally, I think I had just had Lewis. So this was like a big exposure of, like, because I always thought for cancer, because my dad went through cancer, you get chemo and radiation.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I didn't connect the dots, and I was in wellness at the time because I told everyone to exercise and eat healthy. But if you got cancer, that was like in my mind at the time, I thought, oh, well, that's just something that just happens to you.
Right.
Right. And I think that that's because that's how we're led to believe that it's just something that happens to us. And once we get it, we really don't have control over it, but we have to go and, seek out these things that our bodies don't know how to recognize.
Yes.
So
And to speak on that, when my sister had stage 4 double her positive, I went to the oncologist. I fired them, but I flew out there to meet with the oncologist, and exactly what you said. I said, I have a question for you. And she's like, what's that? And I said, what do you think about high dose vitamin C and IVs? She was, I don't recommend it during chemo. I said, why is that? And she says, because it counteracts the chemo.
same
And I
with
said,
juniper. Yep.
wait, you mean that it gives it a run for its money?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me it's
Mm-hmm.
equivalent? If it's counteracting something, right? I said, why wouldn't you just give that instead? And the look
Mm-hmm.
she gave me, I was like, we're done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I use a lot of plant stem cell therapy, phytoembryo therapy and chemotherapies. And through the training, we are not supposed to give someone juniper, the plant stem cell juniper, while they're going
Yep.
through chemo, because it can null and void the effectiveness of the chemotherapy.
Yes.
And then if they've had chemotherapy or radiation, because how
Yes.
it detoxes the liver, we have to
Correct.
be very slow and gentle with using juniper because it is so effective, the plant stem cell, on detoxifying the liver. Even people with herpes virus
Yeah.
have to be careful because it can cause a flare in that. So
I
I
love that
mean,
you say that, because chemo never leaves the tissue, you guys. These are things that are there. And if you don't go to someone who knows exactly what she's talking about detoxing, parasite cleansing, all these things,
mhm,
you will flood your body with toxins and get
yeah,
very sick based on
mhm,
the treatment you've been previously given. So
yeah,
that's why all of this information is so important. But to answer your question about the doctors and why I think what I think, meeting all these doctors through the healthy cooking that I was doing, I have cooked for surgeons, I have cooked for doctor pediatricians. I've had doctors come up to me, apologize for my experience, right? Say that's not representative of, how they want to be seen. And I cannot tell you guys how many doctors have told me that they do not vaccinate their own children.
mm,
That has blown my mind,
yeah,
because they're there to make a paycheck.
mhm,
They've seen the effects probably way before they had a family.
yeah,
Do you understand? And then chose different, and they're locked in to their, not saying that it's right, not saying it's an excuse, but they're literally choosing to do to others that they wouldn't do to their own.
yeah. That's like celebrities and how they like don't let their kids have social media and
Oh,
very
don't
wealthy
have TVs in
people.
their home? Yes,
They don't send them to
exactly.
public school. They send them to Montessori schools.
Yes,
Like,
yes, exactly.
oh yeah, no, I know it's crazy. I think, like Barbara O'Neill says, you and I went to that training together. What I love is how, the first two things she says is, number one, ask why. And the second thing she says is, don't make decisions out of fear.
Mhm.
So when she teaches people, she's like one of the best educators I've ever learned from. It's all about ask why. And then she shows how the body functions. And so we keep asking why, show how the body functions, stay out of that fear. And then you're better able to say, maybe I'd like to try this instead of that. Or asking the question, because I can't tell you how many people come into my office and they have been to the doctor multiple times. They don't even have copies of their own blood work. They don't even have
Yeah.
copies of what they've been through. And I'm like, what? And then they're like, well, I just didn't get anything. It's like they go in, they charge their insurance a ton of money, and they
Yeah.
walk out with no results. It's like, wait a minute, we need to ask more questions. We need to ask why, more so. But yeah, people are intimidated to talk to doctors. And again, we're talking in general statements. This is not all doctors. I've met some really amazing doctors that are doing some extraordinary
Yeah.
things. So those of you that listen to the podcast, we are not talking in absolutes. But in this topic, there are quite a few. It's not everyone, but we gotta ask
Here's the
questions
thing
when.
though, and I have to share this because I love doctors. I think you and I
Yeah.
share the same respect in urgent care matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Accidents, those type of
Mm-hmm.
things, surgical, all of that is just, there's a great respect of education and schooling that has to go to get a
Oh
degree.
yeah.
However, it's the lack of knowledge in this sector. They only have like
Mm-hmm.
a couple hours of nutritional training in their
20
totality, right?
20 hours in their
Yeah.
whole education of
Yes.
nutrition, and it's not even nutrition as whole. It's like, what does vitamin C do when it goes in the body? What does
Yes.
vitamin D do, like from a microscopic versus like the holistic approach? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. And
Yeah.
I have an amazing doctor who's been my doctor since I was 17, and we have great conversations. She only does geriatrics now, but she still sees me, which is like, I go like, if I need something like in 10 years, I call, I'm like, I need this. She's like, that's not how that works. You have to make an appointment, but it's really interesting how many people don't even know their own blood type here in the US, guys. It's
Yeah.
frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you've donated blood or you're in the military, most people don't know what their blood type is. And let me tell you how important your blood type is in other countries. In Japan, they'll ask you what your blood type is on an interview to see if your personality fits the job that you're
Oh
applying
my
for.
gosh, that's so interesting. I never knew that.
In Korea, in the Love Connection game, when the person comes out, the contestant comes out, it has their name, their age, their occupation, their blood type to see if you want to date that person, you guys. And I can't tell you how many times here in the US, they're like, and people get defensive, right? People are really committed to their medications and they're very committed to their
Yeah.
doctor, right? So I've had people literally challenge me and they're like, I could just call the doctor right now and get my blood type. I'm like, great, call them. And every single time without fail, they say that's a separate test and it's very expensive. You can buy the kit for $8 on Amazon and do it yourself in
Yeah,
3
we did
minutes at
that.
home.
My kids, we all did it as a family. Like it
Yes,
was just fun. So, okay,
but
so
they
tell
don't tell
people,
you.
why is people's blood type important?
Because we have hunters and gatherers. So if you look at the totality of health and fitness, like you're talking about how you started, right? Eat well, exercise more, whatever that looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at people's diets, you've got the heavy like lifters. Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, not in extremes like she's saying, yes, we have a vegan Mr. Universe. Don't get me wrong. I understand there's exceptions, but if you look at its totality averages, you've
Yeah.
got the heavy lifters, the CrossFitters, which is really big in Bakersfield. Okay. You've got all of that. They're traditionally paleo or keto. They're very meat forward diet. You look at the Gongchi and the Pilates and all of those aerobic exercises. They're traditionally vegan and vegetarian, right? You got in there. You laugh because there's literally the stereotypes that are like, if I'm going to lift and throw, I have to eat meat, and if I'm going to be peaceful and be a tree hugger, then I have to eat fruits and vegetables only. And if you look at their blood types, it's actually a thing. The gatherers who are a certain blood type traditionally do well in more aerobic, very calming, very grounding exercises. And the hunters that can go fasting because you have to go find your kill for, days or weeks at a time, can go very long hours without eating and be able to do these 16-hour fasts, 18-hour fasts daily, no problem, or the one meal a day, right? So if you don't understand your body and your needs, that's why people can go vegan and get very sick. They feel depleted in some way because they're not getting enough dark leafy greens to sustain their needs. Okay. So when you do the Gerson therapy, the reason why it's so effective and the reason why it's so important to go completely plant-based, because I am certified as a vegan chef through PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, is because it takes so much energy. It's an energetic thing. Once you be able to go and to eat these foods that are heavy, dominant foods that take a lot of energy, you're taking away from the healing process to
like
be able to heal your
proteins.
body.
Yeah, animal products take a lot more energy to digest, you guys.
So does dairy. So the difference between juicing and a smoothie, because people are like, well, I just have a Vitamix, I'm just going to do a smoothie. That is a meal. So when you take the smoothie in, your body's digesting as if you just had a full meal. Juicing takes all the fiber out, so it's liquid like water, goes directly into your bloodstream. So there's a difference. But yeah, letting your food be your medicine is a real thing. And when I did the Gerson therapy, because I did do it with my son, and I was not sick, I was in my early 30s. I was not sick. I had a bleeding ulcer at 19, had my first ulcer at 13. I was told to drink a glass of milk to coat my stomach. That was the only
Oh
thing the
my
doctors told
gosh.
me. That was I was on Tagamet. Can you imagine? I was on Tagamet before it was even a prescription. And I couldn't have orange juice. I couldn't have paste picante sauce. I couldn't have ketchup. You guys, those are like not mild things. Those are like just
Oh my
anything acidic.
gosh.
I was so sick. When I went through the Gerson therapy, I had a healing crisis, and that's what we call it, because it was literally a crisis, but I was healing. Okay. And I woke up after the event. I have not had a stomach ache in like 13 years.
Oh my
I
gosh.
can eat
That's so cool.
habanero.
Yeah.
I can take a shot of tequila. There's nothing right. Your stomach, there's nothing wrong. Where before I'd be on the floor in a fetal position.
Yeah.
So when you do these whole system healings, it goes after. I've seen cancer patients like you're talking about. You've seen people heal where they have a flare up in their shoulder or flare up in their knee, and it was an old college injury from 30 years ago because their body was going back and repairing old scar tissue. Our bodies are incredible. And the Lord has given us so many things to heal. But with going back to the vaccines is when we are attacked, because I really see it as an attack from birth, right?
Yep.
How does that make sense? We literally come out the gate immune compromised. We literally come out, and with my son who was not vaccinated, you guys, he was my third. So I call him like the free will, like free range child. He was eating off the floor. I didn't cover the carts. My mom was like, wash his hands. I'm like, he's building his immune system, right? He was just out one with the world, and his body knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Without me interfering.
It would be so interesting if they did a study about C-section babies with vaccines not breastfed.
Yes.
Compared to vaginal birth, breastfed, no vaccines.
Yes.
Like, because this is like the triple whammy. C-section, not breastfed, and then vaccinated. I think there's emergency situations. Again, this is why the medical community is amazing and why C-sections happen. But I'll say when I was pregnant with my first, they're like, oh, do you want to schedule a C-section or have a vaginal birth? I'm like,
yes.
What? On my brain, I was like, I thought C-sections were for emergencies, which is what they are for, by the way. And I'm like, what? So if I had thought, oh, I could schedule this. Oh, I'm pretty busy. I didn't end up doing that. I had vaginal births, but I was like, wow. But I had that inkling in me to say, why? What? That didn't make sense to me, but for convenience.
But even when Barbara O'Neill talked about, getting TMI, but the poop that happens in the pushing, that's actually not a bad thing. That is literally the bacteria that the baby takes in that helps them in
with their microbiome. Yeah.
And what they do in the hospital is they want to give you an enema to flush your system so that doesn't happen. I mean, it logically going back to everything, it blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just I never took Lamaze classes or anything like that because the one thing I did know when I was pregnant, it was I love being pregnant. It felt so natural, so great for me. I was like, I don't need to my body is going to know exactly what to do. And I'm actually glad I didn't do Lamaze class because when I went in, it was my body just did what it knew to do. And again, I mean, maybe I would have learned really great things in Lamaze class, probably, but I'm just saying, I don't know the difference because I didn't do it. I'm not for or against it, but that was just my experience of I don't know. I just felt I don't know. It was I just knew my body was going to do what it needed to do. And I don't know if it's because my mom had 5 kids and my grandma had 8 kids. So I wasn't scared of the childbirth experience. I just thought, oh, this is what women do. We have babies,
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was actually having my son, I was dilated to an 8. And then they came in and they're like, oh, well, we'll give you your epidural. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know what I know now. And I literally was on the side of the bed, bent over. They kept telling me to arch my back. My legs were shaking in front of me. I was already dilated to an 8. And I thought this was something I had to do. So then they give me the epidural and it slows everything down. And the doctor was already on his way. And then a few hours later, the nurse comes in and is like, okay, well, I think we're going to want to use a vacuum to get your son out. And I'm like, why? She's like, well, his heart rate keeps dropping. I'm like, yeah, but I keep turning side to side and his heart rate gets fine. And later I learned I would not let him use the vacuum to get my son out. Later I learned it's the doctor. He wanted to go home. The nurses, I got so upset because they kept pushing me and pushing me, and my son wasn't ready to come out. And then when he was ready to come out, they told me to stop, like quit pushing. We got to get the doctor in here because he was sleeping. And I'm like, I am not. I said, I give you guys permission to deliver this baby. Like, I can't. They literally wanted me to hold my baby in. I'm like,
Yeah.
it was like the most confusing,
Yeah.
crazy experience that I had. Like, I was like, I just kept having all these red flags going up. And like with my daughter, I'm like, nope, we're just gonna go in. We're gonna have her naturally, like, but it was like, it was crazy. And looking back on it, right? Everything's always in hindsight. We're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. It's crazy it is a business though. We have to remember that it is a business. It's not what's for best for you, even though they take the, oath of do no harm, which comes from a naturopathic physician,
Yeah.
and it's incredible to me. So, okay. All right. So, we're running out of time. Okay. So share with everyone, like with your cooking, because I follow you online and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish she lived closer. Like, I just want to like have her come cook for me or make that for me. It's like so beautiful, the food that you make. It's so colorful and just so share with people like what you do, how you work with people, where they can find you, all
Okay.
that good stuff.
So really quick, because I know we're running out of time, I just want to share, if you are struggling in the state of California and you need to be able to get your child through school. I have a 13-year-old going into 8th grade, never been vaccinated in the state of California. I requested for an IEP, and they will go in and they will test your child. And if they're low in any quadrants whatsoever, you qualify. And under the state of California, nothing can override an IEP, and they do not have to be vaccinated. Once you get one, do not ever let it go. They will try every year in meetings to say they no longer need it or try to bump you down to a 504. Do not allow it. I have kept it strong going through, even if it was like he has anxiety because people look like this the whole time, right? Like whatever it was
Yeah.
that you need to go through to be able to keep it there, where he sees a psychologist for 15 minutes every month. Who cares, right? And he says that the whole time that he's in there, she's talking about me and asking questions about me because he's met me in the meetings. He's like, literally, Mom, I go in there and she's just talking about you the whole time. Okay, so just allow God to cover your children and give you wisdom, and do not go in fear, because you have rights. And during the whole lockdown, the school tried to call me at like 6:30 at night. The district nurse tried to bully me and say that Newsom had done this Care Me Act and it overrode everything, and she really what came after me. And when I said, let me tell you who you're talking to, and when you know who you're talking to, then you can continue. And I gave her 24 hours to do her homework, and she had 24 hours to apologize, or I'd have her job. And within 24 hours, she called and she apologized, because that IEP is your protection. It's your hedge of protection around your child. So please, if you do have any questions, well, reach out to me and I'll tell you how. So with my cooking, I have incorporated since 2009 all the fruits and vegetables. And so my son who got sick, he was my picky eater. You guys, please, those who struggle as a parent, do not feel bad. Okay, I get it. You're tired, you're working, you're running different directions. All the sports my kids were in, I was the one going through the drive-through because I thought they were going to go run it off anyways at soccer. So it's what I had time for. I ran 2 companies. I was super busy. He was my super picky eater. Chicken nuggets, no ranch, peanut butter, no jelly, hamburger, no condiments. Like he was, and he would double down and go to bed hungry because he was defiant. He was my child. So you have all of that put into one. And then, you give in because you didn't want them to starve, because that's like our thought process, right?
Right.
I have parents who say, oh my gosh, my kid, all he eats is Crustables. I'm like, well, stop buying them.
Yeah. Right.
Like, does he have his own credit card and vehicle to get to the store? Like, stop putting it in the house, right?
Yeah.
And so with Salad Master, it's a cookware company, and I do cooking shows and I help people. And if people need to do it on Zoom, we can do it that way as well. but it shreds things and cuts things very quickly. So when I first started on my venture on the shredder, like think of like how you shred cheese, I shredded everything in there, like all the zucchini, all the onion, and like they'd pick out like, what's this? And I'm like, it's seasoning, just eat it. And it started changing their palate. And
Yeah.
as you change your palate, you start craving different things, just how people are able to eliminate, sugars and get alternatives and understand how food actually gives us everything that we want, from salts and celery to sweetened berries, right? So when you understand those things, and that's what I teach. I also have a life coaching where I actually go through your emotions and really find out from birth to now of exactly why we do what we do and choose what we choose. And sometimes there are underlying factors that we've blocked and suppressed for our own survival, right? And we're able to go back and unlock in a very safe environment and clear those things, because cancer comes from anger, resentment, and unforgiveness. And this is why people can heal, okay, from cancer and then it come back. You're not considered a survivor. You're not considered in remission till after 5 years of cancer treatment, because it will come back. It'll just move and it'll come back with a vengeance. So I had people go, oh yeah, I had uterine cancer and now I have stage 4 breast cancer. Or I had colon cancer and I have stage 4 pancreatic. Like it just goes somewhere else because you didn't clear the initial root. Okay. So people will go juicing and they'll do all these things. And like you said, people will do the lifestyle for a year, 2 years, and then slowly go back to what originally caused the environment. Okay. So you can find me on Instagram, Elisha called to lead, Elisha, it's spelled differently. And I have a website called to leadcoaching.com that I'm working on. I had dealt with some identity fraud and I'm rebuilding everything right now. And so I'm getting all that. And then, if people want to reach out, they can do that, or they can call me directly. Can I give my phone number? Is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So my phone number is 909-717-8124. And you can send a text, and I have a calendar link and you guys can book in. I do free discovery calls. And so if I can support you in any way, I'd be more than happy to.
Yay, that's awesome. And we'll put all this in the show notes, you guys, so you can check that out as well. Elisha, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll have to bring you back on because we have so many things to still talk about.
Yes. And if we can help just, one child, right?
Exactly.
If we could just help, and it's not too late. People say, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. Well, there's also ex-vaxxers. And the reason why is because we just didn't know. And with the whole thing that happened with this lockdown, there's not one person I personally know that didn't get it, that wish they had. And I know hundreds of thousands that wish they hadn't. So keep that in mind. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.